The president has just been introduced. He is thanking the person who introduced him and the audience for being there. This is law enforcement officers and prosecutors in Kansas City, Missouri for the Project Safe Neighborhoods National Conference. Expect him to talk about a whole lot more. Let's watch together.
Attorney General under George H.W. Bush, following his unanimous confirmation by the United States Senate. During his tenure, he demonstrated an unwavering adherence to the rule of law, which the people in this room like to hear. There's no one more capable or more qualified for this role. He deserves overwhelming bipartisan support. I suspect he'll probably get it. I'm honored to be in Kansas City with the incredible men and women of law enforcement. I've been here a lot over the last couple of months. The U.S. attorneys, state, local prosecutors, police officers, sheriffs, deputies, and federal agents who keep our country safe. You keep America safe. And you maybe don't hear it enough or sometimes don't feel it enough. You do an incredible job. The people in this country know it and they love you. Just remember that. So true. On behalf of a grateful nation, I just want to say that we thank you, we salute you, and we stand with you 100%, all of us, me and all of us. We're here today to restore one of the most effective crime prevention strategies in America, Project Safe Neighborhoods. This initiative brings law enforcement, community groups, and local leaders together to get the most violent criminals in the most dangerous areas off the streets and behind bars. After many years of neglect, we are bringing back this life-saving program stronger than ever before. Today is the first nationwide meeting of Project Safe Neighborhoods in 8 years. And here with us is the man who started this visionary project all the way back in 2001, former Attorney General John Ashcroft. Where's John? Where's John? Great, John. I've been here a lot lately, John, huh?
Thank you.
Been here a lot. That's good. Thank you. Thank you for a great job. I also want to thank two members of my administration who are doing tremendous work, the head of ATF, Thomas Brandon, and the acting DEA administrator, Uttam Dhillon. Please. Thank you, fellas. We're also joined by a great representative of the state, Congresswoman Vicky Hartzler. Helps me a lot. Thank you, Vicky. Thank you, Vicky. And we are especially excited to have with us the man who is your state's current Attorney General and newly elected United States Senator. That's why I've been here so much lately. Josh Hawley. Josh, thank you, Josh. And I will tell you, Josh really stepped up to the plate. You know, in life, you never know. You pick somebody, looks good, sounds good.
The president there in Kansas City, Missouri, talking about Project Safe Neighborhoods today and who started that program, John Ashcroft, of Missouri, and the Attorney General there, formerly. And he's thanking people who have worked so mightily for the program, originally also started by President George W. Bush. So we will monitor his talk today. We do know that the person who introduced him, interestingly enough, was the interim Attorney General, Matthew Whitaker. And as the president now has made a new nomination for the role of Attorney General in William Barr, we're going to move on and talk a little bit about that, monitor this, and if he toggles back from the Safe Neighborhoods conversation to some of the items that the president has been making big news on today, we'll take you back live. I want to bring in, who's been standing by, Congressman Darrell Issa on the House Judiciary and Oversight Committees. And again, the president there introduced, I want to talk politics for a second,
Sure.
because the Democrats said that, oh no, we're going to start investigations into Matthew Whitaker and some of the stuff he said and blah, blah. And the president has taken that specter out of the hands of his political opponents, or critics, we should say, and now made a nomination that a lot of people are feeling that they can get behind today.
Well, it's exactly right. This is someone that today it would be unheard of, but even then it was rare, unanimous appointment. The important thing to all of us is it's not just that this is a superb senior attorney who has been some time ago the Attorney General. It's that this is somebody that both sides know can handle this large bureaucracy, that can button up and close up a lot of cases, and quite frankly, that people can trust without a doubt. Democrats would be disingenuous if they don't admit this, to oversee a number of prosecutions and investigations, including the special investigation of Mueller. That is important because this is somebody that goes beyond any question. It's an outsider relative to Trump. This is not a friend of Trump. He was not on the campaign. So the credentials are impeccable.
This is somebody that the president said he'd had his eye on from the very beginning. It is, by some estimations, and some critics, even within his own party, have called it an establishment pick. But he was nominated, as you said, 100% confirmed, and Democrats reported that. Let's move on and talk about James Comey and his testimony behind closed doors on the Hill. Why is it, Congressman Issa, that he so much wanted this to be public, and now we'll get the transcript that will come out in the next day or so? What was it that he didn't want to answer? Are there questions that you think that will get asked, won't get asked?
Well, he wanted a public spectacle, and he really wanted 5 minutes back and forth with members taking shots. He almost got it because he is going to have that transcript public very shortly. The one thing I can tell you today that surprised me is that under Trey Gowdy's questioning and John Ratcliffe's, it was the Justice Department, meaning the FBI attorney who's in there with him, that time and time again, I think to his pleasure, told him not to answer question after question fundamental to the investigations that brought him there. And so there's no question in my mind, we're going to be over at the FBI, we're going to be over at the Department of Justice, working out the details for a great many things that they came prepared not to answer.
Like what?
Well, I have to be a little careful. Let's just say, in broad brush strokes, everything related to Hillary's investigation, everything related to how they got onto it and what their process was, everything related to the FISA warrants and the fake dossier, broadly, those are the areas in which time and time again, he's not answering. And I have to be careful because the transcript's not out, and I want to respect the process. But I think the one thing that's remarkable is, even though I can't tell you what he did say, I can tell you this large swath of very important information he's not saying.
Well, was he asked at all, and can you ask him at all about why employees who were showing bias in their text messages were not completely removed from the agency? I'm talking about Peter Strzok and Lisa Page, who were all over texting on their work devices about how they wanted to keep President Trump out of the White House.
When the transcript comes out, you're going to see incredible detail by Trey Gowdy of those questions, exactly the ones you're talking about, and you're going to be displeased, but maybe a little surprised at the answers.
Displeased? You can't give me...
You're not going to accept the answers as the answers that you would think a forthright individual would give.
All right. Can we also talk about leaking? Because that conversation was deepened when we found out. I mean, we knew that there were leaks of phone calls with world leaders and the president's early calls with those that were made early on in his presidency, and that sits in one lane. But when you have the FBI director leaking to a buddy whom he knew about certain things that we now know to be true, did you ask him why he did that?
Those questions are being asked, and this is exactly where Comey speaks out of both sides of his mouth. You know, he doesn't want to answer a lot of questions. Even when he answers, I would call them evasive. And then, as you say, he's been a master of leaking. And, you know, what's irritating, Harris, and I think what the American people really are upset about is the FBI will claim these privileges of ongoing investigation, which, by the way, is not a legal privilege, but it's one they claim. And then they will, for their own purposes, leak what they want to leak to get something, and then complain about leaks. You know, one of the things I learned in 18 years here in the House is that if you believe in transparency, you have to be consistent. The FBI is not consistent, and we in Congress have to make sure the executive branch becomes more consistent in either they don't tell anyone something because it really does protect sources and methods and lives, or it's open to the public at a reasonable time as their right to know, and we're not getting that.
All right, Congressman, I'm curious. You're about to leave. You're exiting. You're on the Oversight Committee. If you guys don't get the questions now, will we ever get the answers to some of these questions? A very quick last word.
The last word is, with Fast and Furious, when the Democrats were in control of the Senate and Senator Grassley was lied to, it was the majority in the House that worked with his staff to get the truth for him. The reverse has to be true. The majority in the Senate, the Republicans in the Senate, have to pick up whatever's being left behind for absence of leadership in the House, and I hope they will.
All right. Darrell Issa of the great state of California, thank you. Good to see you.
Thank you.
Speaking of James Comey, by the way, the Hillary Clinton email controversy apparently is back. A federal judge has given Judicial Watch the go-ahead to demand more documents. I'll talk with the president of that conservative group next about the answers he's looking for. Stay close.